Welcome to Connect, the monthly series to connect you with your community. In each episode, we speak with experts, innovators, and community members, and together explore themes of loneliness, social connection, and healthy aging across Massachusetts. I'm your host, Sandra Harris, the state president for AARP Massachusetts and co-chair of the task force to end loneliness and build community. Welcome to February, the month in which most of us celebrate love. It's the time of the year we celebrate Valentine's Day, which is now morphed into Valentine's Week. It is also the month that celebrates Rose Day, Propose Day, Hug Day, Promise Day, and Chocolate Day. All days designed to sell and market items and services that express love, primarily to others. As we navigate this month of love, it's easy to let social media, store displays, and over-the-top advertisement make us feel like something is missing, or left out if we're not in a relationship, or that romantic relationships are the only ones that matter. Whatever the circumstances, there is no reason to feel bad about your relationship status. Instead, this is the time to be good to ourselves, to become our own secret admirers through self-love. Or use this time to reach out and reconnect with friends and loved ones we have not seen or spoken to in a while. Here to talk with me today about ways to cope with feelings of loneliness during this time of the year is Dr. Zan Barry, a clinical psychologist who specializes in the effect of stress on our health and wellness. Dr. Barry is a therapist who works with top-tier organizations to support the well-being of their communities. Welcome, Zan. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandra. It's wonderful to see you.
Good. Zan, first let's start by letting you tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice. What attracted you to this work?
Well, people come to a therapist often with issues around the fact that life is short. Life is short. I want to feel more present in my relationships. I want to feel better, suffer less. I want to find a sense of purpose and meaning because life is short. And sometimes people come to therapists because life is also long. Life can take us down many different unexpected changes and pathways that, to have someone bear witness to those experiences along with us, to walk alongside us while we're going through them. Either the life is short kinds of situations or the life is long kinds of situations. It's an honor to be able to do work with people who are coping with those two situations.
Good. I know that you do a lot of work with young people who are also living in this loneliness space. Are there specific approaches or techniques that you employ to address self-love and self-care and in the work that you do? And does it really differ by age group?
Well, I wouldn't want to overgeneralize about the youngest generations, but they do have a different relationship with social media on average, and sometimes social media can really alter their relationship with themselves and their own experience of loneliness. So feeling that other people are getting more likes, other people have more followers, other people, their posts get seen more often than mine, that kind of quantification of popularity or of comparison distress, feeling distressed over what someone else seems to have. That can really be heightened in a young social media, a generation that grew up with social media. So I do spend a bit more time with a younger generation, helping them think about ways to not use social media as a way to rank and compare, but a way to link and bond. So social media can also be pro-social media, right? We can reach out and give someone a kind word or spend some time volunteering online or spend some time just doing things that make us feel more bonded and connected over common shared interests.
Oh, interesting. You have described loneliness as a non-discriminating signal, very much like hunger or thirst. Can you expand on that?
Yes, well, Also, the current Surgeon General has taken up this description of loneliness as another biological signal, like chilliness or hunger or thirst, and other social science researchers have I think really helped us explore this idea that it's not, it's such a universal experience, and it's a sign. It's just a sign that the organism needs a little something more. When we're chilly, we put on a sweater. When we're thirsty, we drink water. We don't have to have any feeling of there's something wrong with me, that I have that sensation. Loneliness is a sensation and a message, just as those other things are.
Okay. Does that impact how you treat loneliness now that we know this information?
Well, for sure it helps break down stigma. So for sure it helps. Loneliness is one of those, it's paradoxically a universal experience. So if you are feeling lonely at this moment, there may be 500 million other people on the planet actually who are having similar feelings. And that in and of itself, just the reminder that we're a human among humans experiencing such a common biological signal, can start to deteriorate the loneliness experience and start to make it feel a little less painful.
Okay. One of the things that we're finding is oftentimes people who live in loneliness are reluctant to self-identify as being lonely. And we talk about the stigma associated with it. How do you propose we begin to break down these stigmas, especially when we're alone or we're solo agers?
Yes, and finding other people in a like situation is certainly very helpful. So knowing I'm not the only one, right? There are many people aging solo. There are many people, and we can find those special interest groups in community centers, in get-togethers and meetups, in online communities. We can find people who have similar, or walking in similar shoes. Or we could spend some time imagining, at some point or another, everyone will be walking in these shoes for some period of time. We could go through in the grocery store or in line at the checkout, and say, just like me, this person will also experience something similar. And I think beginning to have that sense of just like me, others also have this cue, this signal, this experience, it does make us feel less lonely.
As we begin to accept the fact that this is a natural feeling, what are some other things that we can do and our listeners can do in learning how to embrace and internalizing this concept that I'm not alone?
Mm-hmm. Well, if we think of it as a signal, if being chilly is a signal that I should put on a sweater, being lonely is a signal that it's time to reach out in some way. And just as I don't want to overthink, should I put on the blue sweater or the green sweater or, which sweaters, just taking any step, any, kind of small step in the right direction toward reaching out, toward connecting with others. I think sometimes getting out of our own self-preoccupation, right? And getting into, is there someone else who could use a kind word today? Is there someone else I haven't talked to or heard from in a while who I think, might be going through a difficult time? Reaching out to others can start to make us feel that we have, some gratitude for what we do have. I think, gratitude starts to also wear down loneliness, right? And can help us feel that we're really not alone in the sense of needing and being interdependent with others. Everyone's in that boat.
We are encouraged, and we tell everyone to learn self-love and self-care and to not look outside for validation. What is self-love and self-care? And where and how do we learn how to do this?
Well, self-care is a relatively new term, and there are some more, in the psychology field, we often talk about self-compassion as a form of self-care. Just as the phone needs to be plugged into its charger each night to recoup its battery, our batteries get low too, and self-care is any activity that recharges our personal batteries. So that could be our physical batteries, our emotional, spiritual, mental stimulation is another form of self-care. So So self-care is something that helps our batteries feel recharged, and it doesn't have much of a downside. I think there are some behaviors that we can do that make us feel better in the moment. They have a little bit of a, an in-the-moment soothing quality. Drinking, smoking, gambling, shopping addictions, those things have a little bit of a burst of soothing quality in the moment or excitement in the moment, but they over time have a downside. Self-care those are activities that really don't have a downside. They're very wholesome for us. They're things that truly do recharge the battery without also draining it at the same time.
All our lives, we've been told to care for others, to reach out and take care of others. How do we make that shift from caring for others to self-care?
Well, if someone's been caring for others and has all of that infrastructure inside of knowing how to attend to and listen to and respond to others in a caring way, then they can start to take all that infrastructure and use it for themselves. So you already have it's great, you have all the groundwork laid if you've already been a caretaker to know how to then just slightly turn that attention around and start to listen to, care for, respond to your own needs. And we are the people who know our own needs the best, right? We will know better than anyone what might feel good in a particular moment. We know, the pleasure of a good walk or a nice meal or, we are the only ambassadors of that inner world that we live in. So self-care has a wonderful way of, once you follow your intuition and you follow your instincts and you say, well, if I were doing this for someone else, if I were doing this for a dear loved one or a friend, what would I do right now? What would I do to take care of them? Then we can, easily turn all of that wonderful skill back on ourselves.
But is that easy to do? Can you be a little bit more clear on how to make that switch?
How to turn it around.
How to turn it around? That, after doing it for a lifetime, that's kind of hard to do.
Yes, and I should say simple, but not easy. Simple in that, just as we would treat those loved ones, so can we also treat ourselves. That's a simple premise. Easy, no. Easy is because it takes the habits of a lifetime, the habits of maybe downplaying our own needs, of maybe sometimes not being able to listen to our own needs because someone else's needs were louder, stronger, more pressing, more important, right? So that is an adjustment period. And actually I would say that's where a support group for caregivers can be incredibly helpful, or any kind of therapy group where you see other people starting to break down their own habits of a lifetime and turn the light of attention, the light of care back on themselves. It's, if you imagine turning a lamp around so that it's shining in a slightly different part of the room, that's really what we're trying to do with our own care and our attention. But seeing others do it and having the support of others can be a huge help to getting that process going.
Can you just give us some simple things that we can do, our people who are listening today can do, to just really embrace self during this, especially during the month of February? Yeah. Give us some simple things that we can do for ourselves to embrace our own goodness.
Yes, I love that question because it assumes that we do have this basic goodness that we carry around inside us. We're just getting back in touch with it, right?
Right.
And I think one of my favorite activities is if you can find a baby picture of yourself, a baby or a childhood picture. Look at that little person. That's you, right? That little, sweet, innocent, adorable person, and start to just feel. Maybe that will soften your heart a little bit and open you up as you look into your own little self. And that does start to create a kind of a little warmth of self-compassion and some of the motivation to want to treat that little person well. That's you, right? We have to remind ourselves that's you. But there are also, the self-compassion literature has this really nice, what's called a self-compassion break, which sounds like it would take a lot of time. It's a break, right? But it actually takes no time at all. It's just in a moment when you're having it's really difficult, or you're feeling lonely, or you're feeling like you're not good enough, you don't deserve your own care, or you're feeling less than in some way. You could just say in that moment, ouch, or just some awareness of like, this doesn't feel good. That's the first step. That's step one. Step two is, and others too have felt this feeling. If I'm having a human feeling, then certainly others have felt it. So the second step is just the common humanity of like, others too have also felt this. And the third step is may I begin to treat myself with kindness in this moment. May I begin to treat myself as I would anyone who is going through this moment of ouch. So that's the little 1, 2, 3 step self-compassion practice.
Okay. Are there organizations or available resources to assist people who are having difficult times navigating their feelings during this time of the year?
Yes, well, I think the self-compassion research is really compelling and robust, and you can find out more at one of the main researchers is Kristen Neff, and her website, self-compassion.org, has some beautiful exercises and beautiful resources, workbooks and things that people can do. I think as I keep mentioning that people can be in support groups, people can be in therapy groups. I think being around others during this time can be incredibly helpful. But if you've been in a phase where you're feeling very inward and you haven't been out in the world for a while and you don't necessarily want to go and talk in a group, just picking any activity where you're around people, even if it's not to talk. I mean, we have so many wonderful universities and institutions of, art and culture here across the state. If you can go to a lecture or an exhibit or even a class where you don't have to talk to anybody else, but just sit and enjoy the information, enjoy being around other people, it begins to sort of get us out of our shell without pushing us too hard to be really super social. If you're not in the mood, don't worry about it. But this is also a time of year when we can set up some other new traditions with our chosen community, the people we care about.
Okay. So this is just also interesting. But let's bring in our field reporter, Kara Cohen, to hear from a special guest who shares her own self-love story. Kara?
Thank you, Sandra. And I'm here today with Lydia McIntosh, who is going to talk to us about how she has gone through a journey of self-love, and particularly as discussed in the program, has dealt with Valentine's Day and other holidays where it was particularly difficult or challenging at times to be solo or single. And so self-care and self-love is something that Lydia really came to understand and appreciate and wants to share with others about. So Lydia, if you could start telling us a little bit about your journey around self-love and self-care.
Well, it was a long journey. I'm approaching 70 years old, and I've been married. I'm going to be married 7 years in April. So prior to that, I was solo. And though I did have 2 other engagements, but basically, like you said, it was a long journey being a solo person, and particularly around the holidays and particularly Valentine's Day. So I think it started, I didn't realize it, but I think it started during the women's movement. And I was in my 20s at the time during the women's movement. And I was dating regularly and had a great time. So that's why I probably didn't realize it. But I think what I want to say is that the women's movement prepared me to think of myself and take care of myself. Because as we all know, I won't get into it, but the women's movement was to prepare us to, be ourselves and not depend on a man or a partner. So that's probably when it started, though I didn't realize it. But I think the pinnacle was with my 50th birthday. So at that point, I'm 50 years old and didn't have a partner, no prospects of getting married or having a companionship, a permanent companionship. So I threw myself a big 50th birthday party, semi-formal. So I had it at a ballroom at a hotel, nice hotel, and I had a gown that was made of gold because 50 represents gold. And I had a 3-tier cake, birthday cake with gold candles. So that's when I think it started. Again, I didn't realize it, but that's when I thought, well, let me take care of me. I probably won't ever get married. And, I was looking for a date actually for my party, and I didn't have one in my own birthday party. But I think that's the pinnacle of, giving myself a really, really nice semi-formal birthday party for my 50th year.
That's a really big example and a nice way to practice self-love and self-care. You gave me some other examples when we chatted last time about ways in which you took small steps to take care of
Right.
yourself.
So some of the small steps was, I believe, when I studied Buddhism and became a Buddhist. I consider myself a Buddhist. And, of course, I did meditation. And Buddhism actually talks about taking care of yourself in order to take care of others. So you can't be happy, and take care of others if you're not happy with yourself. And a lot of it has to be self reflection. So I think that's another way. Again, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was, one of the small steps. And I did that probably about, I'm going to say like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that I started practicing Buddhism. I'm not practicing as much as I should, but I do meditate occasionally. The other thing I did back then a lot was journaling, and wrote, which is basically talking to myself and writing down things when I was sad or when things weren't going, the way I planned. So that's helpful because you can write it down. And again, I think self-reflecting, whether it is, journaling or meditating or reflecting, so that's some of the small progress I made with that.
Right. There's certainly been a lot spoken about gratitude journals,
Yes.
And taking those steps on a daily basis to appreciate the things that you might overlook.
Right. At least think about it, And I did take joy, a lot of times I would, I was home by myself or whatever, but I would take joy in just the simple things, like just even looking at the sky or looking at flowers or the trees. Or sometimes I would look out my window. I always have lived someplace where there's a tree next to my apartment or home, and I would see the birds. And, I remember one time I had a blue jay that came on a regular basis, and I took joy in that this blue jay, in the middle of the city, was visiting me, basically. So the other thing is just takes joy in simple things in life, and like I said, have gratitude for what you do have and not focus on what you don't have,
Right. You've also been a runner.
Yes.
For much of your life, and physical
Right.
activity is an important way of taking
Yes.
care of yourself.
Exactly. That's really important, at least for me. And I think it could be helpful for someone to stay active physically and mentally and socially and spiritually, however way that may be. Is different for everybody. But running has always been very, very important, because I feel like when I go out for a run, whether it's for training or even in a race, it's me. It's like I just focus on me. And a lot of times it was a meditation, it was a movement meditation when I went out for a training run. So I get lost in my thoughts. And it was very refreshing, because I just, like I said, I didn't think of anything bad, or anything sad or anything. I just enjoyed the outdoors. And
I think you've positioned yourself in behind you. You have all your ribbons from all of your races.
Right. Actually, my husband's and my ribbons together in recent years. I have a bunch more for myself when I was a serious competitive runner, like about 30 years ago. But these are the more recent medals that both my husband and I, because he's also a runner as well. And then also to my right, there's a cover of National Women's Running Magazine. And then there's an article next to that profiles me as a runner, that was done, I think, about maybe roughly 10 years ago.
Great. Yeah. So just to sum up and bring this to a close, is there anything else you want to share with people about your advice and what's worked for you?
Well, it is a process. It is a journey. So, I sometimes have slipped back, and like got sad, especially if I was at someone else's wedding, or, when I was in the office, when I was working, seeing other coworkers getting these big flowers, bouquets on Valentine's Day. So it doesn't, you have to just let that go and just like embrace that. So again, just like even giving yourself a hug, a simple thing. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. It could be just giving yourself a simple hug. Have thoughts where you say, have gratitude for the accomplishments you've made in your life. And that it probably will come. So for me, I, thought I never would get married or find the love of my life. And I did, and I got married at the age of 62. So it can happen. It may seem like I really thought I never would get married, but I did, and now I'm happily paired with someone.
Yeah.
But I still take care of myself. So even though I have a partner, a husband, but you still always should take care of yourself.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lydia, for sharing of your experience and for telling us a little bit about the steps along your journey. And we wish you well with your running and with everything else. Thank you. Back to you, Sandra.
Thank you, Kara. Zan, before leaving, what is the last piece of advice you would like to share with someone watching today who wants to fully embrace self-love? What do you wish for them this February?
I love that question. So I think this time of year, or any time of year where there are anniversaries, holidays, just the milestones of past events where people can feel, their emotions can get stirred up and people can feel like it's a difficult time. I think it's really important to plan things to look forward to. I think it's important to maybe set some new routines and new rituals and start to bring in some fresh, new perspectives. Maybe get together with different people this time of year if it's been historically like a difficult time of year. But that can be true of any difficult anniversary or any difficult kind of milestone date. And if we can think of self-care and self-love as something that we take just a step in the right direction. It's a verb, it's an action. So if I could, see people take just one action on their own behalf and then let that grow and build, I would, think that would be setting them up for a wonderful year ahead.
Thank you so much, Zan. This has been really, really good and interesting. And thanks to you, our audience. We hope you'll join us again next month for another episode of Connect. Until then, please reach out to your loved ones and neighbors, especially those living alone. Visit us at inlonelinessma.com to watch past episodes of Connect, to learn more about the task force and find ways you can get involved in this work.
If you enjoyed this program and others offered on community media outlets, please contact your state legislators and ask them to support an Act to Modernize funding for community media programming. This bill has been introduced in both the Massachusetts House and the Massachusetts Senate, and if made into law, would provide much-needed revenue for local community media. If you're not sure who your state legislators are, visit mass.gov and type "Find My Legislator" in the search field. Then, just type in your address to find out who the folks are who represent you in the Massachusetts House and Senate. Give them a call and ask them to support this important legislation. Thank you.